Hey everybody, it's okay. I'm gonna stop that and we're gonna cut that out. We'll start again, okay?
Okay.
Hey everybody, it's Eric with What's in the Box, and we're doing Meet the Authors of Texas AuthorCon 2. And today we have with us Stephanie DosSantos.
Yes. It's nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me. It's been great.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, and I say this every time we do this, and we only have a few episodes out, but we have quite a few already done. And this event isn't a horror event. This is a book event. We do have a lot of horror authors that are going to be there, but we also have a ton of other genres being represented. And I know you are a fantasy writer. Is that, would you call it fantasy, or is it young adult fantasy? Which one does it
Yeah,
fall
let,
under?
let me stop you just for a second. The dogs are going
Oh,
crazy.
that's
I
okay.
wasn't
I've got two
prepared for that.
huskies. Yeah, I know, right? I have
Okay.
two huskies that start howling during our presentations, so we're kind of used to dogs jumping in there. So, but like I was saying, you're a fantasy writer, right? That's the
Yes, that's
genre.
all. That's all I know. I've got two books out so far, YA fantasy, probably appropriate for middle grade as well. So it's folklore retelling and fantasy.
Okay, cool. And we'll get more on your stuff at the end. But so normally what we have is all these horror questions. And you and I had talked in the DMs, and you are not a big horror fan. So I have tweaked the questions a little bit. Our first question normally is Jason, Michael, Freddie. But for you, I'd like to ask Katniss, Potter, or Percy Jackson.
Oh, hmm. To toss up between Katniss and Potter, I would have to go with Katniss, I think.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
What's funny is out of all three of those, that's the only one I've actually read. So I've seen all the
I
movies, but I've only
I
read Hunger
I
Games.
have
So
started Percy. I'm enjoying Percy, but just knowing the other two, got to go with Katniss. Big fan.
yeah, my wife is a huge Potter fan. In fact, she doesn't like horror at all. Doesn't read anything I write. She's a big and she's always like, "Hey, why aren't you writing something more like this? Why don't you give me this kind of stuff?" But I'm like, "Well, that's just not what I write." But she's read the Percy Jacksons and loves them, but Potter is the number one thing. I think if she's not watching the movies, reading the book, she's listening to the book. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
constant stream. So I feel like I've probably read the Potter books because it's always, I know all the movies, but I've listened to it in the background all the time. So, but
yeah.
I think I enjoyed. I really did. I thought the first Hunger Games was an amazing book.
Yes, got all three of those movies, watched them over and over, read the books. I made it halfway through Harry Potter. The sister is a big Potterhead. She grew up on Potter and of course just getting into Percy, but I would like to actually write something more closely aligned to that challenges and battles in my next series, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and that's always fun, right? To kind of stretch out a little bit and get into some of those other things that you enjoy to read, but to get it to incorporate into your story and make it smooth, it's a fun process. So it's always nice to see that writers are trying. Because sometimes you'll meet a writer that all they do is one note and it's one note every single time, and then you get kind of tired of that note. And so it's always encouraging to know that, and I think maybe it's more in the indie world. It feels like self-publishers are willing to take a chance and to do the things that are kind of outside the box, or maybe something they're not comfortable with because
But
they're trying to get,
whatever
just they're
works.
doing
And
it for their
people,
fun. Yeah,
yeah, and people want the same thing, only different. So
right.
yeah, that's been a big thing in the self-publishing world too. Give them the same thing, only different. And if it works and it's making a living for you, go for it.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of times, I mean, I know a lot of writers that do it, and it's just because it's fun.
Yeah.
They don't focus on the business side of it as much as they do just the writing side because they just love to put out stories and do things like that. And I always appreciate that too because
Yeah.
because this is a pain in the butt sometimes. And so all the extra stuff you have to do is a nightmare because it pulls you away from writing. And that's the fun. That's the whole reason we started was because we like
No,
writing.
that's true because I do have friends. Oh, you wrote a book and tell me, they have an idea or a story for a book and they think it's just writing and you send it off to somebody. Well, you can do that and go down the traditional route and spend forever. But when I tell them that I did everything on my own, they're kind of surprised. And then I get into it and tell them all of the back end work that you have to do. Then all of a sudden they're no longer interested. They
Yeah,
just
I
want to
know,
write the
right?
book. So I
For
totally get it.
sure. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I mean it's amazing when you look at it. Because I mean there are people out there that will do it for a price or whatever, and you can find some people that are cheaper than others. But it's expensive to put something together, to find a cover, to, do the editing if you're going to go with, a professional editor or whatever.
Yeah.
Just even formatting. I mean, I don't think people understand. I mean, now there are programs that make it a little easier. You kind of plug and play. I know especially Amazon, they really are like, hey, look, we have a program for you, use it, and then you can only use it on our site. But when you want to stretch your legs out and go on all the other sites, if you want to do the formatting, it's not easy. And then you're looking at trying to format for ebooks, which is different than formatting for paperbacks.
Yep.
And then you've got all the other things you got. And people just don't get it. They're like, oh,
yeah.
well,
I started. Oh, sorry.
No,
yeah,
that's it.
When I added up all the money that I had spent on book one to do taxes at the end of the year, totally shocked. I was like, I spent, because I knew I'd spent a chunk, but once I added everything up, the programs to format and all of that, and the editing and the cover, like you said, and even adding in little things like an author logo, it's like, oh my, what?
Yeah, that
I'm
first
going to
one,
try to make a living out of this.
right? I know. And the first one's the one that blindsides you, because it is everything you're going to need.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you start to build your catalog, then you're like, okay, well, it doesn't feel that bad anymore, because you put all that cost in that first book. You forget that sometimes when you're putting out your fourth or fifth book, and you're like, oh, this is a piece of cake, because you finally know how to do everything, and you don't remember that week of the formatting program is shifting everything 3 centimeters, and you can't figure out why it's happening, and and you're about ready to have a nervous breakdown because you got a due date or whatever. So there's a lot of fun behind the scenes. Yeah. So normally after we talk about Jason, Michael, and Freddie, and for the record, as I say in every episode, it is Jason. That is the correct answer.
Okay, I'll go with Jason.
Right. We understand why Freddie is so popular, but because he talks, but I just think Friday the 13th is the better overall movie. Nightmare 1 and 3 are great, but some of the Nightmare movies are terrible. And I've never been a big Halloween guy, but really there's a lot of muck in there. So, and they're kind of, they're going everywhere with their storylines now. So you can really, it's difficult
to branch out, and I'll think of you guys when I I try one day.
Well, I was going to say, I loved your answer. I don't watch scary movies because they're scary. And I thought, well, you know what? That is a very good reason not to watch them. So what we do next, though, is we always roll into vampires and werewolves. If you want to answer that question, that's cool. But I was thinking, instead of that, if you have a favorite fantasy creature that you do like, what would that be? I mean,
well, for the horror folks, I'm gonna have to go with werewolf, because it's like an animal. I like dogs. Obviously, we had the barking earlier. That's animals, a little bit more nature. I'm not into the blood-sucking vampire thing. But as far as fantasy creatures, I'm gonna have to go with the old classic of Aslan in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Okay, yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
So when you say Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, are we talking the book, the animated film, or do you like the live action? If we were going to pick one as your favorite,
I would say movie, just because I saw that first when I was a kid, and
the animated movie or the regular,
just the movie, just the live. I think it was the live movie. I mean, Aslan obviously was animatronic, but if you didn't cry when Aslan died, you have a heart of stone.
Right. Well, I'm wondering now. I think I'm aging myself here. There's an animated Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe that came out in the early 80s. And that's my favorite version, because it's the version that I was forced to watch in school all the time. That was one of those videos when they put the VHS in and make the, watch a movie at Christmas. We watch that movie constantly in school, and it's terrifying. It has got some scary elements. The little, the dude with the ice queen, it's like a little goblin thing, but the way they animated it, it's pretty scary. And I remember seeing it when I was like five or six, and it stuck with me. That's always been my favorite version, although I do enjoy the books, and I thought the live action stuff was really good. I just didn't like the casting of the live action of the kids. I was like, oh man, we're gonna be stuck with these kids for so long, and some of them were just flat personality wise. But I did enjoy the third one. What was the third one? Prince Caspian, the live action one. I think that was the third one they put out.
I don't know.
So, but that was the one that that was the final nail in that franchise. It didn't make enough money, and they pulled the plug. So,
sure, yeah.
I'd love to see Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe picked up on Disney as a series. Let's get 8 episodes. Yeah, because you're right. Aslan is an incredible character.
Yeah.
and it's a very moving moment when he does that. And C.S. Lewis is a great writer, so
Mhm.
I mean, I love a lot of the stuff that he's done. Um, as a kid, what was your favorite fantasy movie?
Oh, I think probably after that is kind of when I got into fantasy more, probably as an adult now than I
Mhm.
was as a kid. I kind of
Well, we're
have,
gonna hit you with both favorite as a kid, favorite as an adult, see if they're the same.
okay,
So, however you want
because
to do it.
me being a kid at heart and loving puppets and the
I
storylines
like
of
where this is going. I like where this is going.
don't have any puppets to show you now, but they are here. It was the Dark Crystal,
Oh, I love Dark
the
Crystal.
Jim Henson's Dark Crystal,
And you know
and
what? Didn't
yeah,
that not scare? It has a tons of scary elements too. In my
I
mind, that could be
I
a
thought it
horror.
would be terrifying, but my
Yeah.
mother said, "You gotta go. It's great." And I was like, "No, it's gonna be scary."
Oh,
But
it's really good
it's
though.
on DVD downstairs, and yeah, I make everybody watch it. So,
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, and you're doing your duty because you should make people watch it. More people need to watch that movie. That's a movie everyone should
pretty
see.
cool.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be that, or I thought you might say Labyrinth. I thought,
I've not
okay,
seen Labyrinth. Everyone
oh,
tells me about it, and for me being the fantasy fan,
yeah,
I need to
no.
see it.
I feel
So
like
I'll put that on my list.
we need to stop right now. You need to go watch the movie, and then you come
Okay.
back and we'll talk
All
some
right.
more.
You
No,
got it.
it's a wonderful movie, and I think you're gonna love it. I mean,
Cool.
I can't. Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine if you're a big fantasy fan, that really needs to be in on at least seen. I mean, I won't hold it against you if you don't love it, but I think you're gonna love it. It's one of those
Let me
movies that
ask,
really takes you.
is it a like a portal type fantasy going to other worlds?
Yeah,
Okay, I would like it then.
yeah,
That's my jam.
and it's got David Bowie. He's the
Oh,
Goblin
okay.
King,
I
and they
used to be a big
sing,
David Bowie fan.
and their songs, it's a little silly, but at the same time,
Okay.
it fits perfectly, and you don't ever
Billy's
think
good.
anything. And if you like the Princess Bride, it's got kind of that same humor,
Yes,
a little bit of that.
yes, and
But it's
yes.
got, I'm a huge Muppet guy. I grew up on the Muppets. I love the Muppets. So you throw a Muppet or a puppet in something. I mean, I've even watched a horror movie that the entire cast is puppets called Head.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's hilarious because it's got all the it's R-rated.
Really?
It's filled with puppet nudity and sex and violence and swearing but it's all puppets.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is amazing. And it's not like Team America puppets, the wooden ones. It's like old-fashioned Muppets. So it's really
Okay.
cool. It's usually free on Prime and it's probably on Tubi because Tubi plays everything.
What
So
is
if
the
any
name again?
the name of the movie is called Head.
Head. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I should be keeping notes here. I'll have to
Well, I know. I'm just throwing that out
rewatch
there
this
for
and write
everybody.
it all down.
Yeah. We'll put it in the notes. Everybody needs
There
to
you
watch
go.
Labyrinth and they need to go watch Head and
Good
then they
idea.
need to watch like you said, Dark Crystal, because that is an amazing film. So as an adult, do you still gravitate towards those? Is there something recent that you've fallen in love with or
Man, I'd have to say a mix of both. Mm, Hunger Games is not, I mean, it's fantasy, but it's more adult and
Mhm,
almost
for
kind
sure.
of post-apocalyptic almost. Yeah, tongue twister there. But
I
I'd
mean, it's
like to think
dystopian
about.
in a way. You could consider it horror. A lot of people
Mhm.
do think dystopian fantasy fiction is borderline horror between, fantasy,
No,
sci-fi, horror.
probably true because it's pretty terrifying
Yeah,
what
because I
may
mean, if you were
happen in the
stuck in that,
future, right? So
yeah.
I would have to go with Hunger Games and just stick with the old classic Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Now I'm gonna throw this out here.
Good.
Do you watch a lot of animated stuff?
Not much.
Have you seen The Last Unicorn?
No.
You definitely have to see The Last Unicorn. Yeah. And it's
I
animated.
feel so uneducated right now.
No, it's okay. I'm a gigantic nerd and an only child who liked to watch movies. So
Okay.
that's how my parents entertained me growing up. Was here's some movies
Okay.
to watch. So yeah, no, you need to watch The Last Unicorn. You'll love that too. You should read it too if you have the time. It's a fun book. But
You're going to make me read the book first, right?
no, I
Before I
think
watch
you can
the
just
movie.
jump right
No?
into it. No,
Okay.
I think the animated movie is just it's brilliant. And
Okay.
it's got Jeff Bridges,
Oh,
Christopher
wow.
Lee, Mia Farrow,
Big
and
names.
the whole story
Okay.
is about a unicorn who is told that all the unicorns are gone, and she
Oh,
decides to leave her forest to see if it's true. And
Tug at
then,
your heartstrings. That's
oh,
what I like.
it's an amazing.
Okay.
So,
I'll put that
um,
one first on my list. Then I'll
yeah,
go back
definitely.
to
In fact,
Jason and
I'll look it up to
Ray.
see where, because my first point would be you could just watch it here, but since you're not here, you'll probably have to find it online, and I'll try and find a place that's streaming it for free.
That'd be
So,
cool. Yeah,
um,
send me a link.
so what about now? So we got the movies out of the way. Another thing we like to talk about, or what we would normally would say, is like, what's a horror, book that you would hand to somebody, say that's just interested in getting into horror. So if I came to you and said, hey, I'm kind of really interested in getting into fantasy, what's a book I should read to kind of, and I know that everybody is going to answer the horror one this way. Well, it depends on what kind of horror you like. And
Ah,
then they go into all the different kinds of subgenres and stuff, and then you have to but what I'm saying is basically what's like the introduction for you to get into fantasy, or what is your favorite fantasy book to read?
wow. I have read a few good ones lately. I did not think I would like, now you got me thinking of the name. It is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, about, no, something so bold and deadly, something, a
Okay.
vow so bold and deadly, I think. I forget who writes it, but I read that and I'm like, I can't get all three. So I'm halfway done with that. I think it's a vow so bold and deadly, I believe. Yeah, I say it's a great one. It's my favorite. And now I can't remember the name. That
No,
book's
I do
really
that all the
good.
time. I have notes
Uh,
everywhere. So
there was another one that was good that I did not think that I would like either. Um, I like, it's actually an indie friend of mine, AP Beswick, and
okay.
his is A Forest of Vanity and Valor. And it's kind of retelling off of British folklore, which is kind of how I got into that and met him on some social media sites and so forth. And he is full-time as an author now, has several books out. So if you like knights and medieval and British
Oh, for
folklore
sure.
and things like that, and it has a little bit of gore, not a lot, just a little.
Just a
So
splash.
he calls it dark fantasy. So
Oh
if you're
yeah, yeah.
into that,
Well, let me
then
tell you, a lot
those
of
are
well, that's a funny thing, and a lot of people are hesitant to get on here. Some, I think, a little bit that aren't horror people, but
the,
most horror readers read fantasy, science fiction. They're not just specifically
yeah.
horror. It's not like
That's
romance,
cool though.
you
Yeah.
know. Usually, the romance people are very focused on romance. They only want to
Mhm.
talk romance. They're only going to read romance. That's everything that you got. But when you get into these other genres, I've noticed that we all kind of blur together. We
Yeah.
all have
I
different
I
things
am
that
not as well read as I should be, saying that I am an author and writing books, but I guess just
I
life
think at
is
the
so
beginning,
busy for
though,
me and I just write what I want to write and off I go. But I
right?
could probably be much more well read than I am.
Well, I mean, if we're just talking fantasy, there's so many different books that you would need to read. You know what I mean? So there's
Yeah.
so much. I mean, it's such an overwhelming amount of fantasy. It really does depend on the kind of stuff that you like. You could any kind of subgenre that you're into, there's a fantasy world about it. Like I'm a big Robert Jordan fan, so I usually, if I'm asked that question, I'll probably say, you need to read the Wheel of Time series. I may pull out Conan. I do think classic Conan is a good thing to go to if you like that kind of sword and sorcery kind of fantasy. Um,
I think didn't Brandon Sanderson finish the Wheel of Time?
yeah, he did,
I think he did.
and
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
an amazing feat because it reads almost identical to Jordan, and I
Mm,
think that's a special talent to be able to morph into somebody else's voice so completely. And Jordan is very unique. It's not He's got such a unique way of writing that maybe that's what made it easy for Sanderson to do it. But he slipped in and ended up writing the last, I want to say 4 books, because the last book was so big they had to break it into 3 books. So I think
okay.
he ended up doing 4. And they have all the notes and all that. It's an amazing story because he was halfway through the series and it was supposed to be a 6-book series, and it ended up being, I think, 14 books.
Holy mackerel! I didn't realize it was that
Yeah,
long.
and he went and he pitched the idea to Tor. I think Tor is the original publisher, and said, "Hey, I want to write this trilogy." And the guy looked at him and said, "You can't write a trilogy. I know how you write. What you're telling me is at least 6 books." And he goes,
Yeah.
"Okay, well, then I want to do 6 books." And I said, "Okay." And then, like I said, it got to 14, and he was, I want to say, about halfway through it, and he discovered he was ill, and
Mm,
it was an illness that ended up killing him. But he knew that his time was short. He
yeah.
stopped writing everything, I think, and then wrote timelines for every aspect of the story.
Wow.
And from what I understand, on his deathbed, he is telling people how the story is going to end, how this, just in case. And
Yeah.
so then they have a library that the two people were in charge of. And so Sanderson would call and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this character. I need to know all the things." And they would go through the library, find all the information and send it to him.
That's
That's an
cool.
amazing, that's a
Yeah.
fantasy world that you can really get immersed into. And I hate that he died, because he had plans for some of those characters to have their own series after the fact. And it would have been really interesting to see where he went with those.
Yeah, I'd like to get into that one as well, because I've got a bunch of Sanderson books that I haven't jumped into yet. But it's the worlds too that I like, not just, going to another world, but describing that world. And
Yeah.
there's one, Sarah Beth Durst, she has the Queens of Renthia, that is, it's a good trilogy as well too. And I love her style of writing. It's very earthy in nature and up my alley. So that's a good one as well too. So it's either your character. Oh my phone. So that is a good one. I do like me some Sarah Beth Durst.
Yeah, and as when I was a kid, they just started putting out the Dragonlance and the Forgotten Realms, the stuff,
Oh,
like the new Dungeons and Dragon movies based on Forgotten Realms. I have a ton of those books. I read it when I was a kid. I don't read as much fantasy now as I did, but I will always read. I reread Robert Jordan, once every 2 to 3 years. I'll read the entire series. So, and I've been
so
doing that for a long time.
is it Paolini? Isn't he a dragon guy? Jason Paolini? Aragon? Is that what he writes?
Yeah, I think so.
Dragon?
I think so. Yeah, I was trying to think. I think so.
What have people put in the comments? Yes, no.
Yeah, I know, right?
Completely off
Somebody answer
base.
that
You'll
below
let
so
me
we know.
know.
Let us know if you know the answer, and then and we'll go from there. So as an adult and a kid, so we've done the kids, we did the movies, we did the books. Let's see if we have any other
They're very similar because I refuse to grow up.
well, that's the best way, I think.
refuse.
Most of the stuff I love now are the stuff I loved when I was 10, 13, whatever. So every once in a while something will pop up like the Terrifier, then I'll be like, oh, well, this is new and kind of fresh and interesting. But then a couple weeks later, I'm back to watching, Freddy or Jason or whatever nonsense I was into. The Last Unicorn, which everyone should watch. So, so let's get into. So we know we've discussed the genre. You're right, which is normally the next segue question we get into. You like the fantasy and stuff like that. So, let's talk about your project. What have you written, and what are you planning on writing?
One series so far, 2 books. It's Talon in the Tree, and just recently sent to the editor was the prequel, The Healer's Chronicle. So book 1, we have some show and tell here. Is it backwards? Of
Nope.
course it's backwards. Talon in the Tree.
It's not backwards on my end.
All right, backwards for me. So this is book 1 with the tree on the cover. That is the legend. Book 2 is the elimination with this crazy jaguar on top.
Yeah, beautiful covers.
Thank you. Book 3 is starting this week. This one is The Truth, and the one that just went to the editor for the free prequel. So if you sign up at the newsletter as a newsletter subscriber, you'll get a free ebook when this is out shortly. Hopefully in the month. This is The Healer's Chronicle, and it's the prequel. Talks about the history of the dueling families that are in the books. So it'll be.
Did you find that difficult to go back and do a prequel after you've gotten 2 of these done and you're in the middle of the 3rd one, or was it just
I actually thought it was a lot easier. I really thought it was going to be crazy because I find it very hard to understand how J.K. Rowling kept everything straight in all of the story bits in Harry Potter. And I found myself only after doing 2 books doing the same dang thing. What did I say about this? Oh, this could be connected to here. Or I would leave something open for later to answer, but I didn't know the answer to it when I wrote it until I got to the next book. So I bounce back and forth. I'm very linear. I tell the linear story. It's all from, beginning to end. But the prequel does jump back to tell the history of where we start in book 1. So there's lots of things in the prequel that if you read it, then you start reading the books, you're like, oh, that's why. Until you read the whole series when I'm not quite done yet to give you all the answers. But it cool. Does lay hints for other books. And also I wasn't sure on a lot of the details in the next books that were coming up until I wrote the prequel. So I found it easier to write the prequel after, because I was able to tie the storylines together in a way that I didn't think I knew how when I wrote the first book. So, yeah, and I guess trials of being a new author.
Right, for sure.
That one.
So. Yeah. My Don Texas series, it jumps around. And so I actually have a huge spreadsheet that ties every year together. I've got 5 years out, I think, and it goes from the 50s to the 60s, and then it jumps to the 1800s, and then goes
Oh,
back into 2002, and then
that would be
1978.
difficult.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
each book is self-contained. So you just can read 1 year and you'll be happy with the book. But if you're interested in learning what's going on with this cursed town, you read all of them, and then they all start to answer questions and go around. And so, yeah, no, and you can't do it without a spreadsheet and a whole bunch of
Yeah.
notes
I
or
I would say
rereading
mine.
constantly.
Yeah, that's what I want to avoid for the
Yeah.
readers having to. Now, what did she say in book one? But sometimes there may be, a little Easter egg where it's like, that was interesting. And then you find out in book two, that's why they said
Yeah,
it.
and those are always fun. And I love that when people can do that and they do that within their stories. Some people don't like doing it, so they don't. But I think a very fun and I think it's what makes fantasy so fun is having those little Easter eggs pop up
Oh, yes.
and do that. So and I think that's cool that you're giving the prequel away. And that's we'll make sure that have all that in the show in the notes.
Yeah, it should be a total of 5 books. So let's say I'm at the halfway point,
Mhm.
really. And then as far as the prequel, since we're kind of talking a little bit Texas AuthorCon, as long as it comes back from the editor in time, I will have paperbacks at Texas AuthorCon, and you can only get them from me, and they won't be free.
Oh,
But
sweet. Well, no, that's
if
awesome.
you
Yeah.
really are into paperbacks like I am, then
Mhm.
you can get that as well. Fingers crossed, things will be
Yeah.
back and printed and ready. But otherwise, yeah, the newsletter is your place to go for that. Yeah.
Very cool. So you said you're working on this project. Do you have something else that you already know you're going to work on after this, or is it going to be one of the things I'm
Oh,
going to finish this project and then I'm going to start kind of jumping into the next thing?
the old plotter pantser question. I fly by the seat of my pants. And I think part of that is, it's a little bit personality, but I think it's also kind of just the way I've also lived my life. I am by trade an ER nurse, and so you don't know what's coming through the door.
Right.
And I was a paramedic before that, so I was always flying by the seat of my pants. So I like to plan things, but I'm a mix of both, but I would say I'm more pantser until it's all drawn together. So I have ideas. Like I said, I kind of want to do something that is more competition based, kind of like
Mhm.
a Hunger Game or something, but try to figure out what a completely different take on that would be. I do not want to copy. I don't want people to go, oh, it sounds like the Hunger Games. Like any book, they want to
It's
say
almost
that
impossible to
different.
avoid now, but
I
you do want it
know.
to be somewhat different. I definitely get that.
I would like to do that in some sort of fantasy world, but that's literally the only idea in my head right now, just because I'm not a super fast writer, just because of the full-time gig. So I want to get the series out of my head.
Yeah,
So
for sure. I get that. And I'm 100% a pantser. I no idea what's going on half the time. And I write notes and I'll do an outline and I have never followed it. I've ever
really,
rarely look at it. It's like I
really,
wrote down the ideas, those are all garbage, I guess, and now I'm going to go do what I'm going to go do. And
wow.
and so like I said, when I keep the spreadsheet with Don Texas, everything is backwards. It's only if once it's made it into the story am I putting it in the spreadsheet. There's no forward notes like, oh, we're
Mhm.
moving to this event. It's all like this is all that's happened. Figure out the rest yourself. So
Yeah, I'll
um,
have beats and plot points, and I've got a big poster
yeah.
board. I'll put post-it notes all over. Nope, rearrange, do it this way, move them
Yeah, and
around. And
I
then when
think
I see that, I get a new idea. Oh, but wait.
mhm.
So I'm visual in that way too, but it's been tricky because it's a serial. Unlike yours, you say you can pick up a book and read it and
Mhm.
get the full story. You still get a full story arc in each of the books, I think. But it is a serial. So to
Right.
understand book two, you've got to read book one.
And fantasy fans understand that. If it's a series, they understand that there's a chance this is going to end on a cliffhanger, and we need to know that. So,
Oh, the dreaded cliffhanger. Don't
right.
read my
So,
books. Cough,
um,
cough. Don't read my books.
well, I prefer them, especially if it is a
Okay.
series. So,
All right. You
I
might
think
like
that's
it.
the best way. Yeah, I think, and you of course, you're going to take notes while you're doing it. You'll have plot points and things of that
Copious.
nature, but you're never.
Copious.
I have read books and I have watched courses that are like, this is how you write a book in like 3 days or something, and they have all these very specific questions that you have to answer. And I'm like, I don't know those answers until I'm in the middle of the second edit
You
half of the
nailed it.
time.
You nailed
So
it. Yep.
that, and yeah, and I
Exactly.
think a lot of people like to say, I have I don't really, I can't think of any actual plotters that I've met that are consistently doing that. It's almost always pantsers
Yeah.
that are doing it this way, which may, I don't know, maybe that says something. So, um, let's see. So, is this your first book event, or have you been doing some stuff in the area?
This is the first book event.
Very
So,
cool.
yeah, being, writers are sometimes introverts. I'm a little introvert, little extrovert, but not knowing what to expect and going in and talking to some of the organizers and knowing that it was very heavy, it started very heavily into horror. I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And then
Mhm.
another friend that I had met in another group said, hey, we're doing this thing. You want to split a table? So I was like, well, okay, I'll go and try it. Then you'd know somebody and go. And she had written fantasy as well. So the first day I'll be sharing a table, but she won't be there for the second. So I guess it's all mine.
Okay.
So, but at least I'll have a feel at that point of what to expect and say, okay, put your big kid panty-ons and go for it
Yeah.
and do it.
Yeah.
But everybody's like, no, go try it. And I want to meet other authors. I obviously want to meet readers, but it's, you don't know until you get out there and you try something. So
Yeah, and I
I
think it's a fun way to get out there and talk to people. If you go to an event that's more book central, if you go to some of these events that are more celebrity or maybe movie central,
or
they
Comic
ignore.
Con or something.
Yeah, they ignore writers, and so then you're not really getting a good taste of it. These people that are going to come are going to be there because they're interested in reading, and that's always nice, especially when it's one of your first ones. We last year was my first event,
Oh,
and so and it was kind of thrown together, and we had 14 people, and it was in a different hotel, and it was much smaller,
yeah.
and it was a great time, and it was fun. And if nobody had walked in that door, I would have been like, this was a win, because like you said, you don't know what you're doing, so it helps you get a little taste of doing something, but also you get to meet the other writers that are there. But we were steady traffic the entire time, and it was a Sunday, and so I didn't know what to expect, and it was a fun event. This year we went from 14 to like 60 something people, so we already know that there's going to be a ton of genres represented and a lot of people there, and it's in a really nice hotel, and it's right off the highway. So I think we're going to have a ton of traffic.
Yeah, jumping in with both feet, talking to some of the organizers, they were asking, do you want to do a reading? I'm like, no, not my
Yeah,
thing. But would you like to do a panel? So not only is it my first event, it's also my first panel. So I'll be I'll be
that's
helping with five
awesome.
other people on the fantasy and folklore panel on the second day. So we'll be swapping stories and,
That's
all our
great.
different,
Yeah,
the
we
ways
didn't
we
even
write or
have
put things together.
we didn't even have panels or anything the first year. We just kind of stood there at our table. So it's a big jump that we got readings and panels in a section for that spot. And you can tell the growth of the event. We went from, 0 to 60
That's
like that.
good.
And I think that's exciting. And I assume we're just going to get more, you
Bigger
know,
and better.
I don't know if we'll get bigger and better, but I think we'll start
It's
getting that machine
Texas. It's
feel.
bigger and better. It's
Yeah.
always bigger.
Right, I know for sure, but I don't know if
Yeah.
we need it to be too much bigger, but it's going to be fun. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
I am
and I,
looking forward to it for sure. Yeah. And I mean, still nervous that it's my first and nervous
Mhm.
about the panel a little bit, but I do have a friend that said anything you've ever done, you've always jumped in with both feet and just
Yeah.
did it. So
Oh, that's
yes,
perfect. Perfect advice.
that's the pantser. Let's, you never know
Yeah,
what's coming through the door. So let's get it done.
that's right. Just
Yeah.
run in and act like you're supposed to be there, and everybody will think
Smile and nod.
right.
Smile and nod.
That's exactly what I did on my panel when I went to Scares over in Virginia the early couple months ago.
Oh
Well, I
wow.
guess about a month ago. We were in Virginia, and it was my first panel, my first big event, really. And when I got on the panel, I told the guy, I'm just gonna nod. You say whatever, I'll just nod. I'll be fine. So, because it was
No,
funny,
that's cool.
I had almost lost my voice by the end of the second day.
Oh
Just
geez.
talking. There were so many people. We're just constantly talking, and I'm just, like you said, introvert. Don't really talk that much. So
I
it
think
was a
even
fun
though you're
time.
introvert, you get people talking about a common interest or something that you
Sure.
love. You're really not an introvert
Yeah.
because, of course, your friends always know you best, but they're like, I can't shut you up.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah, it just depends
Yeah, I
on the
agree with that.
situation.
Well, it
Yeah.
looks like our time is running out, so I just want to say thanks for coming on. I'm really excited to see your table. I thought those covers were beautiful, and hopefully you'll
Thanks.
have the prequel. But if not, we can get it for free on the site. The links will be down low, so
Mhm.
everybody check that out, and then come out to Texas AuthorCon on July 14th and 15th. I
Believe
always get
so.
this wrong, and I should probably write it down somewhere so I have it in front of me. But that'll be down there too. And everybody go to the website and sign up for a ticket. You don't need a ticket to get in; it's a free event, but you want a ticket so that you can be eligible for the door prizes. And this is a fun way to get a whole bunch of cool stuff. There are people giving away books and audio codes and merch and a whole bunch of things. So definitely go check it out. And
I'll be
make
giving away a
sure.
set as
Oh,
part of
awesome.
the
Then
giveaway.
definitely stop by Stephanie's table. So thanks for coming on.
So. Thanks a bunch.